Hello, BookTube. Well, it's the end of May. June is right around the corner, and that leads to a rash of great videos on BookTube, June TBRs, to be reads, where people talk about the books they're looking forward to reading in June. And I want to be part of that community fund, but it doesn't really work for me to do it. I plan on reading in the month of June well over 100 books. I can't barely make a video that's 2 hours long, naming and talking about every single one of them. But I have done a lot of reading already in June. I'm currently reading books in the autumn, so a lot of the finished copies that I will get in June or get to in June will be rereads. So there are quite a few June books that I can already recommend, and that's what I want to do. Not a TBR, but a TBR BY, a to be read by you, where I recommend 10 books that are coming out in June that I want to bring to your attention, and that if we were walking around the new release tables of a retail bookstore, I would point out to you if we saw them. And this video is the latest in an ongoing chain of videos where I try to struggle with showing you the books. Because when I'm in the creator studio of YouTube, there is not a little button that says insert picture. That you click on it and it shows you that arrow that allows you to browse on your desktop for the picture you want to insert. Now, there's no such thing. So I have the devil of a time putting visuals in here. The iPad that I typically use has trouble fighting against natural light. Lots of trouble, probably because it's a very old machine. So I'm trying my phone this time around. We'll see how that works. I don't know if it'll work or not. But the first book that I want to recommend to you is pricey. I think it retails for around $100. And it's also derivative. It's not original at all in concept. We're going to see that a lot in these 10 books. I'm sure that at some point I will make a bloviating point about that. But nevertheless, it's one of the best examples of its kind that I've ever seen. It's this. It's by Stephen Brindle, and it's Windsor Castle. Kinda, sorta, maybe. It's a gigantic picture book of Windsor Castle. Not just the rooms and the hallways and the renovations and whatnot, but also the history, archival photos, all sorts of great prose. I mean, we've all seen. I'm sure that if you're, for instance, a Windsor fan, a fan of the House of Windsor, you have seen many books on the House of Windsor. There have been countless of them, and I have quite a few of them. But this one is really, really good. A first-rate example of the kind. So I wanted to bring it to your attention. Then the next one, going to be bittersweet reading for you Americans out there, on either side of the political spectrum for radically different reasons. But nevertheless, I've seldom read, it's a political book, and I've seldom read a political memoir that was quite like it. It's by Ben Rhodes, and it's The World as It Is. It's his memoir of the White House of Barack Obama, where he was an aide to the president and became a close friend. Almost a mentor-student relationship between them. And that in itself, again, might not sound very original. There have been plenty of White House memoirs like that. The thing that separates this one is that Rhodes is an unbelievable storyteller. It reads, I don't even know. It reads like some sort of, it reads like a deeply personal memoir, but everyone, all the personalities in it, including all these famous people, names that we know, not just the president, but all sorts of other people in his administration, come vividly alive. So whether you think that Barack Obama sold out the country and was a secret Muslim and is, good riddance to him, and we're glad that all the stuff he did to help people is being ripped apart, or whether you're decidedly, bitterly wistful about when we had an intelligent person in the Oval Office instead of a monstrous grifter. You turn over the country, and on the soft underbelly of the country there's this enormous engorged tick that it just nestles in when you look at it in the bright light. No matter which of those you believe, this is an incredible book. I'm a student of American presidents and also presidential memoirs by aides and whatnot. Some of them have been monumental. Others have been just horrifying PR jobs, belated PR jobs. And this is something different. This is it's monumental in a way. It is. It's an incredible reading experience. So I highly recommend it. And it isn't the first memoir of the Obama years to come out, and it won't be the last. But it's a standout. So if you're interested in the subject, you really should read it. The next one is an author I've praised on this channel before. It's fiction. It's summer fiction, and it's utterly delightful. It's Elin Hilderbrand, and this is The Perfect Couple, which takes place in the summer in Nantucket, which is a very popular time for weddings, not just with people on the island, but people who vacation there, people who know how picturesque it is. It's that part of the opening of the novel, that part of the premise of the novel is not at all wrong. Nantucket is an ideal, almost fairy tale location to have a wedding. And one such wedding is being planned at the beginning of this book, and it's being hosted in a gigantic, opulent seaside mansion. And everything seems to be going perfectly, and you know that that's just when novelists swoop in, and Elin Hilderbrand does, in a way that I did not see coming. I'm very familiar with this author's books. I really love them. But there's almost a devil-may-care pushing the boundary in this one that I liked very much. A dead body turns up, and all of a sudden, a book that was going to be the normal, predictable beach read about all the crazy chaos and minor heartbreaks and possible complications that lead to a happy wedding suddenly becomes all that plus a murder mystery in which every single putative guest at the wedding is a suspect. And it works wonderfully. I'm a big fan of this author anyway. I don't think she'd be happy sending an imperfect book to her team. A book that doesn't work, a book that doesn't deliver, and this one does. So if you're in the mood for a smart beach read, which is, people who don't like beach reads tend to say that such things don't exist. That's not true. They do, and I'm a big fan of them. And if you're in the mood for that, this is the book so for the season. The next one is a debut, and it strikes the same theme that we've struck already a couple of times, which is that it's a debut novel, and its premise, its opening plot, is intensely derivative. We have read a million books like this. An older man, after a long and happy marriage, loses his wife. And when he and his adult children are sorting through the memories and what's left over and the secrets and all of the impressions that each one of them has, it turns out that a very different composite picture of the beloved wife starts to assemble than the one the husband is clinging to in his grief. And that's a common plot device, and the only thing that saves it here is the same thing that saves it in the many books that are like that on this list, which is that it's perfectly done. It's wonderful. It's The Dependence by Katherine Dion. How does that look? So this is still not an ideal visual thing, but I'll list all these things down below so that you, if you're in the mood for debut fiction, cutting, extremely insightful debut fiction about families and about memory and about the untrustworthiness of love, then this might be a book for you. And we're gonna try to go on to the next one. We're gonna make all these images try to behave. The next one I think you've seen on this channel before, and a couple of you have been in this apartment and seen it in the flesh, but I couldn't not recommend it. It's by Yuval Zommer, and it's The Big Book of Blue, which is a big, oversized children's book about all the things that swim and live and hunt and play in the ocean. And it's just as simple as that. It's a big kids' picture book that's designed for them to spread it on the floor and lose themselves in it. And as is the way with most really good children's picture books, that will happen to adults as well. It happened to me. And it will happen to you if you're in the mood. And this is getting a major push, so it will be in your retail kids section. Some of these things, that Windsor Castle book, I doubt that any retail bookstore would order it. For display, they would probably wait for you to specifically order it and pay up front. And maybe a couple of these other things, but not this. The Big Book of Blue will be in your kids section, probably prominently displayed. So take a look through it, because it's not to be missed. I love children's picture books, and this is one to have. And then the next one is also something I've recommended on this channel before. I'm gonna try to make this the last time that I recommend it. I will review it in the month of June at Open Letters Review, and I will probably mention when I get the paperback. But in the meantime, I had to recommend it one more time because it is such a standout book. It's by Carl Zimmer, and it's She Has Her Mother's Laugh. It's a big, thick book about heredity. What it is, what it isn't, what it has the potential to be, how it's misunderstood, well, the role it plays in all our lives, full of anecdotes, full of incredible insights, one on almost every page. An amazing, big overview, popular science book on a subject that literally affects everybody. So I knew, when I knew that it was coming out, I thought, all right, well, there's a lot to write about there, but I had no idea how well it would be done. It's tremendous. So if you like that sort of thing, then I would be very vocal about it if we were looking at it in the bookstores together. Then the next one is history. I notice there's not a lot of history on this list. I call them like I see them. There'll probably be plenty of good history in June, but nothing that really stuck out at me the first way around. But this one, this was really good. This is by Helen Rappaport, and it is the race to save the Romanovs, which is her story. Everybody knows the story of the execution of the Romanovs, the Romanov family, by Russian soldiers. After a long imprisonment in the countryside in exile, after being deposed, where they might have had all sorts of thoughts. Of course, when you're a prisoner and you can read the writing on the wall, you'll do anything to fool yourself. And it was a father and a mother and a bunch of children, so of course there was lots of wishful thinking. But there was no way in the world that the revolution would let absolutist monarchs live. And the absolutist monarchs had to know that. And more to the point, as has been the standard interpretation of this event for 100 years, other monarchs, all the other monarchs in the West, also had to know that, including King George V of England, Tsar Nicholas's cousin, and almost a dead ringer for him. In certain pictures, it's hard to tell them apart. And George V has routinely come in historical studies as the bad guy in why the Romanovs were killed at all. That it was easily within his power to secret them out of the country, or even to openly demand that they leave the country, and give them sanctuary in England. And he didn't do it, and they died. And the standard understanding has been that that was just cowardice on his part. There was political trimming and shaving when there were lives at stake, including the lives of children. And it's Helen Rappaport's goal in this book, it's one of her goals in this book, to overturn or at least to shade in that historical verdict. And I knew that after about 20 pages, that was going to be one of her objectives. And I finished the book, and I really liked it. It's a fantastic job. If you're interested in Russian history, if you're interested in European history, if you're interested also in the pathos of the Romanovs, then this is on a shelf of books that you have to have about them. But I have to say, for all the other stuff that she does really well in the book, she did not convince me. She might have made a case that other monarchs in Spain or whatever, and other groups, humanitarian groups and otherwise political groups, could have done more. She does make a case for that, and I believe it completely. It is a very nuanced portrait, a welcome nuanced portrait. And I like it for that, and I'm recommending it for that. But one of her goals was to lessen the guilt of King George V. And none of the other people or groups or organizations that she talks about as groups or people or organizations that could have done more to save Tsar Nicholas and his family, none of those were the King of England. And King George V was. And it wasn't just a fellow monarch in theory, it was a cousin. And he didn't do anything. He was afraid to do anything. He was afraid that if he took them in, he might lose his own throne. There's no sense exonerating, and there's also, in my opinion, no successful way to exonerate this weaselly, cowardly little man. But everything else the book tries to do, it does wonderfully well. So I do recommend it. The next one will go back to fiction. Some of you on this channel may know, if you've studied my 3,500 videos, that I'm a big fan of World War Z, the ultimate zombie novel, which is a story about the zombie outbreak, an outbreak of zombieism in the world, told in the present day as if no one had ever heard of zombies before, and told in a sort of a oral history fashion. All kinds of different people give their account of events in the first person, and it's become sort of a collage, a kaleidoscope of a novel. I think that makes it immensely powerful. It gives it a sort of a cinema verite look that works really well, and that as a gimmick means that if you do that gimmick, you are once again being derivative. You are once again doing something that has already been done. And like so many other books on this list, this next book does that, but I'm recommending it anyway because it does such a fantastic job. This is by Raymond Villareal, and it is called A People's History of the Vampire Uprising. And it's not about zombies, it's about vampires, where these people appear to be dead, their blood appears to have turned to a solid sludge in their bodies, and then they disappear, and when they come back, they are better. They're stronger. They're immortal. They're faster. They have better senses. They're more attuned to the world. And they're also predators who need to eat, who need to drink blood in order to stay alive. So they are vampires, but good and bad. Good to the point where some people want to become, they're called gloamings, and some people want to become them. Want to give up their humanity in order to become them. There are elements of that all throughout Kim Newman's great Anno Dracula series, where some humans want to be turned into vampires. And there are also some characters in Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles that make that choice. And this is told in the exact same way as World War Z. Dispatches, fragments, a collage of different perspectives on the event rather than a straightforward narrative. And all of that together, you would think, would make this tiresome, just tiresomely repetitive because we've seen it before. But it doesn't. It doesn't. And that is chalked up solely to the author's execution, the author's enthusiasm and powers of execution. So, again, this would be a kind of beach read. Probably a beach read for people who don't go to the beach. But boy, what a book. So much fun. So I do recommend it. And the next one is, I guess, Once Upon a Time. June, July, and August were stereotypical travel months. People left town because towns didn't have air conditioning, so they became stinking cesspools of heat and humidity. So anybody with the means left town, went to the country, or took a seaside cruise or whatever. And people do still vacation in the summer, so I guess this next one sort of fits that bill, but boy, did I love it. I would have read it at any time, and I recommend it to you. It's this. It's by Stephanie Rosenbloom, and it's called Alone Time. And it's about the joys of traveling alone. The author goes to 4 major cities alone. No raucous traveling companions, no loud groups, no tourism, no nothing. She goes to these places alone and enjoys them alone. And it's wonderful. And I say that not just as someone who spent a lot of time traveling alone. I've gone to all the cities that she's gone to alone. Except if you count a bawling mob of dogs. So I guess I never was alone. Not the way she was. But the elegance of the prose and the elegance of the insights into... Because in addition to the interest of just being a travelogue and in the interest of traveling alone, in addition to all that, she makes the point a couple of times, and she's not heavy-handed about it, that the inner quiet of traveling alone, the inner quiet of solitude, the joy of being unplugged from the rest of the chattering world is something that we're all in danger of losing. It's a very endangered thing in the 21st century, and the 21st century is only 20 years old. So who knows how endangered it'll be in 50 years' time. And that this book captures that perfectly. It's not original. There have been many travel books about traveling alone, and there have been many travel books, about a woman traveling alone. But the original, as is the case with so many other books on this list, the originality of the concept doesn't matter. It's the execution, and boy, is this done well. And then I want to finish up here the formal list. I have one thing I want to say after this last one. The last one is a romance. You're probably wondering, where are the romance? No, and June I don't know. I might be missing things. I'm sure I am. But June struck me as a little thin on the ground for romances that looked enticing. And the ones that I've read about a dozen June romances so far, and none of them really did it for me, except this one. Oh boy, this is a great series. It's a series you don't need to read in order, but I do recommend all the other volumes in it. If you've seen them in the romance section of your bookstore or in used bookstores by now, and you've wondered whether or not you would like it, it's really good. It's layered and intelligent and funny. It's Joe Goodman, and it's A Touch of Flame is the latest one. Can you make that out there? It's part of her a series of contemporary romances for a set in Colorado. This one, again, the basic plot is something we've all seen before, including on a very popular TV show that was a series. It's a doctor who's a woman who goes to a small town, and they've never had a woman doctor before, and then the dashing young hero here on the cover is the newly elected sheriff of the town. It's his job to welcome her, but he's never met a female doctor before either, and he's provincial. And they hit it off, of course, and sparks fly right away. And Joe Goodman that's never enough. In the first of this series of books, the plot that kicks off to complicate the love affair is a very interesting family dynamic. And that family dynamic runs through a couple of the books. It's noticeably absent in this novel. Instead, it's more social. There are a couple of plots that kick off that don't have much to do with tortured family dynamics. And the romance, as a result of that, probably the romance is much sweeter in this book than in any of the others in the series. But they're really good. This is intelligent romance writing. So, and believe it or not, it's not Regency romance. It's a contemporary Western. I know. I'm as surprised as you are. And that's it for my 10 recommendations. You'll have to let me know in the comments field how the phone did for visuals. I'm thinking it wasn't all that much better. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Maybe I'll just have to have the physical books in front of me to do visuals. But one way or another, in addition to those 10 for a June TBR BY, I also want to make another recommendation, also for June. The second, there's a 2-book set, and the second one comes out in June. So it fits in June. I've mentioned it on this channel before. It is a mother of an undertaking, so I wouldn't blame anybody if they didn't do it, if they weren't interested. And it's The Carbon Ideologies by William Volman. It's 2 800-page volumes about humanity's fascination with carbon fuels. He interviews everybody who is connected with them in any way, and he lets the interviews go on at length. And he writes about all of these industries, and he writes about them at length. and at first, 100, 200 pages into the first volume, you'll think, all right, well, this could have used a good editor. My prediction is that, like me, you will get another 100 pages in, and you'll say, you know, a good editor or no, I don't know where I'd cut. I really like these stories. These stories they're depressing and thrilling and funny and sad, and I don't want to lose any of them, not even a single line. And by the end of the first volume, all you want is the second volume. But it's a massive undertaking. It's the two together are one book, and they're enormous. But I couldn't let a recommendation for June go by without it, because it's unbelievably important. I consider it the most impressive thing that this prolific author has ever written, and I don't foresee any book in 2018 being more impressive just in general than this one. So I had to add it. I'll leave a notation for it down below as well. But anyway, that's it for now. That is a June TBR BY for me, because I don't like to see all the TBR videos happening without joining in. And I will list all these things down below, and I'll wrap this up for now. But I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.